quella domenica mattina chi va in chiesa e chi in cucina e chi sta a letto a riposare.
E sta passando il giovanotto e il cuore mio mi trema il petto quando lo vedo qui d'intorno. Provo certo un bel diletto.
Now we talk about something of ricotta. The first element that I propose to you is why people in the past make ricotta and make cheese. Because they had to conserve the milk.
This is the first time that we've tried a food school. So this is a kind of laboratory for this particular course. And so there have been lots of surprises because, of course, the ways that you think about things in theory are not always the way that they take place on the ground. But that can be really good and really positive.
You can see what there is description of who paid for this, and they were the fruttaroli, so the ones selling the fruits.
The thing about GLS, Graduate Liberal Studies, is that we have access to the world in a sense because we could put our field schools anywhere. However, there has been a long tradition of field schools in Italy because of the richness of the culture. 10 years ago, 2016, I did a school in Rome where I met our original Italian partners here, where we were looking at the idea of Italy in the ancient and modern imagination. And so there was a strong sense of the way in which Rome was the center of that school, was the heart of it, and the ways in which it just offered the students, in terms of cultural richness, something that you don't necessarily get anywhere else, particularly because we as a school are so interested in the stratification of history and the various layers.
The history of cuisine coincides with the history of humanity. With the discovery of the fire, the man began his evolution. I think that talk about history of food and culture of food is very important because let us understand what is the food, what the fact, the struggle, the hunger that is behind this food. But I think that with the culture, we can respect more the food. I think that is a revolutionary instrument, the culture. And so I like a moment like this because people are hungry to know why this, what is ricotta in the past. And I think that is very revolutionary because the culture is very, very important. And this, one of the problems today is there is no culture. No history, no culture, just the moment, just what you need in this moment.
What is down there that they found? They found 4 main temples, that dates back to the age of Republic, so before the construction of the empire, before the time of Julius Caesar.
Rome is such a layered place where, you know, you simultaneously have Renaissance architecture and Roman architecture and current stuff, and it's all continuous.
This tug of war constantly in Rome, you feel like you're, somebody used the word palimpsest. It's a document which is on parchment which has been scraped clean and rewritten over and scraped clean and rewritten over, and you can see the text bleeding through. It's fascinating. And I've been to Rome before, but I never saw it through these eyes before. I'm here to see not the idea of Rome fed back to me as a tourist, but I'm here to really see Rome as Rome sees itself.
And so this is very important because a vegetable market, fish market.
Especially when you get somebody like Guido who's so passionate, right? And he's so articulate about these things. And it makes me go, right, yes, that's what I've been thinking, but you've said it out loud for me, right? You've given me language for thoughts I've had, which has been amazing. We are insulated, especially in North America. We have a particular lens and particular view of the world that coming someplace like this, talking to people, local people on the ground, and in, you know, people with knowledge, expertise in their area, opens that world for us, like opens us really to what it's like to live different lives and to be in different places. And I think this is so key. It's different than learning about it in a book, right? To feel it, to be on the ground, to eat it. right? Really opens your mind to what that experience actually is, to be somebody else from a different place. It's such an immersive experience, right? It's so different than you're reading about history, is to sort of live in history. It's almost hard to get your mind around all of these things happening at the same time, but the lens that we've been given of food has really tied it together. And I grew up on a farm, so food has always been really central to sort of the way I see the world. So it's been really interesting for me.
Here, if I should be serving here to you the food, that we have ordered what we want.
The reason I wanted to come to Rome, and in particular this travel study program, was to explore how can I layer history, storytelling, connections with other people, other cultures, my classmates, through visual drawings. So as I've been, from the moment I set foot in Rome, I've been drawing every single thing that I've eaten or consumed. So I have this collection of, well, lots of coffee, but all kinds of foods and treats, and all creating this sort of montage of nourishment. And that will be the sort of backbone of my project. And then my relationship to food and how that has changed over the last week has been really interesting. The sort of contemplative narrative that's woven through the act of slowing down, appreciating every morsel, and capturing it.
Just to be with everybody and feeding off the energy of everybody, and to be like, talk about this nerdy kind of stuff that when you talk about with other people, they just kind of give you a blank stare. But you're in like this group of people that we all kind of get it, and we're all here to learn, and just like when someone else asks a question, we're all leaning in to hear the answer because we're all interested in all those sort of ideas.
So there is a very famous Italian saying that says, cooking with garlic and the shirt on. This means don't peel it, crush it a little bit and put them inside with the shirt on.
There's a great line last night when we were in cooking class where I said, so I don't notice there's a lot of onions in the food, and in the sauces. And he goes, what kind of sauce would that be? And I said, spaghetti sauce.
If you use garlic, you don't use onions, never together, because of usually this is very strong, and this is even stronger. If I put them together into the same dish, I don't taste the rest of, in this case, fresh tomatoes.
You only have that in North America, spaghetti sauce. He says, over here our sauces have names. There's carbonara, there's cacio e pepe, there's all these different treatments, and you realize that we peer through a drinking straw at Italy, and we see this through, like, looking through the Aventine keyhole and seeing the image of St. Peter's, and that's our picture of Rome from Vancouver.
Macaroni, not freddi, distruggono.
I always use in my classes where I teach Italian cinema scenes of where food is eaten or prepared or discussed as symptomatic of a certain message that the movies want to convey. So, for example, there is a famous scene of Alberto Sordi eating the spaghetti that I showed in my class on food and cinema, and that is a classic film. What he says, the lines he says have become part of the Italian culture as an attempt to open up to a different food, American food in this case, but ending up eating traditional Italian spaghetti. Cinema has always taken advantage of food to express something that has to do with historical context or the class differences. So the popular cuisine of which Guido has always spoken is often used to show certain part of the society.
All right, guys, let's start. One.
Great question, and I'll be honest that a lot of it came out of my own research, which is to say my last book was a book about my grandmother's story as a forced laborer in World War II Germany. She'd been captured in the Ukraine and brought to Germany to do forced labor, and a lot of the ways in which my family learned about the story was through the act of cooking with her in Niagara Falls, where she immigrated to. And so the stories about the forced laborers, all of that came out through the act of cooking. And so I, as a researcher, became very interested in the idea of cooking as this space in which oral histories are shared, in which, because of the rhythms of making things together, you start to understand things about the past that you wouldn't otherwise.
And all of these ravioli, beautiful, one by one.
I asked them, can I turn this into a music project? Because I explained to them one of my great interests is the Islamic influence on music.
So most of the time it was enriched with honey.
But being here, we're studying about food and we're talking about the history of food in Rome or in Italy. And of course, one of the first things I discover when I'm reading the course material is the Islamic influence of food on Italy, which is certain kinds of pasta. That's one of the many things. Of course, there's a lot of ingredients as well that were foreign to Europe that came through from the southeast.
My project is about the great pastas of Rome. How many are there? Well, are there 3 great pastas or are there 4 great pastas of Rome? That's what I'll be exploring in my project.
My project for this course is about food security. So I'm writing food security sort of through my family history of immigration and of war and famine, and there's so much of that history here as well, right? Of how political food is and how related it is to the economy and the wars and what's happening, and how that influences how much people have access to food.
To be allowed into the
My friends, a part of my studies are on the relationship between osterias, the restaurants, the old Roman restaurants, and political organization. Because if you study the history of the working class in Italy, the bigger organization born in a restaurant, in an osteria. Osteria is the parliament of the poor people, of the people.
Every day has been a new injection of inspiration and eye-opening enlightenment as we kind of learn how to place ourselves within the context of this broader history. The only thing that I think could have made this even better was more time. It has felt just overwhelming, this bombarding of all our senses being engaged, and using food as the through line. Of course, you don't even get a break when you sit down to eat. Well, especially me, as I'm madly drawing my dinner.
I have to say that many of us have characterized GLS as the program we were waiting for all our lives. It's the one where we get to not be trapped into a single way of seeing things, like approaching it from history or philosophy or art history or food history or anything, but to get a synoptic view, to get an overall 360-degree theater in the round sort of view of Western culture. Tracking the history of great ideas from 2,500 years ago. It's been one of the best things I've ever done in my life educationally.